In this video, I'm going to explain to you all the differences between the LT and Coyote engines. And for those of you that don't know, the LT is the replacement for the LS. And we learned in my LS versus LT video that the new Gen 5 LT small block is pretty special, but Ford has stepped up its V8 game in a big way. If you want details on the LS or LT, I've got videos for that, but we haven't talked about the Coyote at all. The first generation Coyote engine was in production from 2011 to 2014, was available in the Mustang GT and the Ford F-150 pickup truck. But it was sold in much lower production numbers than the LT, and we'll get to that in a second. Just like the LS and the old 4.6-liter modular Ford engine, the Coyote has an all-new design with some features carried over from the modular family, but there is no interchangeability between the two engine families. The new Coyote has a dual overhead cam, twin independent variable cam timing, and we'll get to that in a second too. The second gen Coyote engine had changes that focused mostly on high RPM operation. The valves were slightly increased to make more power, and camshaft lift was also slightly increased. Gen 3 Coyote saw the addition of direct injection in combination with a low pressure port injection system. We're going to talk more about that too. Gen 3 also increased compression ratio from 11:1 to 12:1. And I didn't forget the supercharged engines. I've got a whole slide on superchargers coming up. Let's keep going. The LT is about the same size as the LS. It's very compact due to its cam and block design and pushrod heads, but its larger displacement and bore makes it a little bit longer. The Coyote has a massive cylinder head, which makes it more challenging for swaps, especially in classic Fords that have high shock towers. As you can see here, it's about 4 inches wider and about 3 inches taller than the LT, but it is about 2.5 inches shorter than the LS or LT. Here you can see the massive size difference of the Coyote cylinder heads, but those cylinder heads are actually magic, and they may be worth the extra size. Let's keep going. ɡild has some new t-shirts. There's a link below if you're interested in buying one of these shirts. Let's talk bore spacing. This may be one issue with the Coyote that you're not aware of. As we've seen, the LT comes in a 5.3 liter and a 6.2 and even a 6.6 with an iron block. And the 6.2 and the 6.6 share the same 4-inch bore. The Coyote is limited to a smaller bore. It's maxed out at 3.7 inches. It may not sound like much, but that bore is limited to the cylinder bore spacing. That's the spacing from bore center to bore center. You can see on the right that the 4-inch bore pistons of the LT won't fit in the Coyote. The Coyote bore is maxed out. If Ford wants to make this engine bigger, they have to make the stroke longer. They have no other way to make this engine any bigger. But in many ways, the Coyote is so efficient at making power, it doesn't need bigger bore. But it is a limiting factor for Ford and anybody who wants to modify this engine. And this is also why the Coyote engine is a little bit shorter front to rear, even though the other dimensions are larger. Engine weight, a LS or LT fully dressed with all accessories and a flex plate is around 465 pounds. The Coyote bare crate motor, like the one shown here, with no exhaust manifolds and no accessories at all, is 445 pounds. It's way wider and taller, but the Coyote is a little bit shorter, so I'm calling it 490 pounds with all the accessories. It makes sense though, the Coyote is just larger and it has 4 camshafts, which each weigh almost 10 pounds each, plus larger heads, etc., etc. This is, of course, the major difference between these two engines. I've talked a lot about the magic of the LS and LT engines being the cylinder heads. This is true, but it's even more true for the Coyote. The Coyote is unique in the fact that the variable valve timing system allows the intake and exhaust cams to move independently of each other. This means dynamic and constantly changing lobe separation angle, which the LS and LT do not have. It changes depending on what is needed, power, torque, efficiency, just like any other cam timing system, but it's one more tool that the Ford engineers have to optimize horsepower and torque even more. This Ford twin independent variable cam timing system should only be removed for all-out hardcore racing. Otherwise, it's a win-win-win, power, torque, and efficiency. And sure, I love the lopey idle of a super wild cam, but whenever you hear that, it means that that engine is sacrificing a ton of low-end torque to get that high RPM max power. And with the LT and the Coyote, you get both. Okay, let's geek out on the cylinder heads a little bit more. Let's talk some valves. These valve sizes are to scale with each other. On the LT, you can see the LT valves are massive, way bigger than the Coyote. This is a win for the LT, right? Well, not exactly, because the Coyote has 4 valves per cylinder, obviously, But going from 2 valves to 4 valves increases the opening area, and even though the valve area of the LT engine is actually more than the Coyote, the larger intake valves cannot suck in the amount that 2 smaller valves can. But you can see here how the LS and LT have been able to keep up with these more complex variable valve engines that use huge valves. Smaller valves are also lighter, which means the engine can rev higher, create more power by doing that, and will also have a slightly quicker throttle response because of the lighter weight. If you like this kind of detailed engine information, please click the like button. And also, if you don't want to miss my next video, please consider subscribing. So the LT has a larger displacement engine and therefore doesn't really need an exhaust manifold designed for torque. So it has more of a full-length style header. It's obviously not a full-length style header, but you know what I mean. And as we talked about in my header video, full-length headers tend to give you more high RPM horsepower. The Coyote has more of a short tri-Y-ish manifold. It has a smaller displacement engine and needs help making torque. So it's kind of a double Y. Anyway, it's better for torque. The Coyote can make 400 foot-pounds with only 5 liters, and I'll have more on that towards the end of the video. Direct injection. Okay, this is more about the magic that's happening inside the cylinder heads. A quick reminder, the LS does not have direct injection on any of its engines. The LT has always had it, and the Coyote got direct injection for the Gen 3 Coyote, which came out for the 2018 model year. The Coyote combines a high-pressure direct injection system with a low-pressure port injection from the previous generations. There is one big problem with direct injection. For a few reasons, a bit of oil makes its way into the airflow coming into the engine. In a port-injected engine, the fuel spraying in cleans the valves. But with direct injection, the fuel is being sprayed directly into the cylinder. The Coyote engine has both port and direct injection, which means this issue is not a problem on the Coyote. It does add complexity though. You have 16 injectors on your engine now instead of 8. Still, I think this is a pretty good advantage for the Coyote. It should be noted that the LT5 that's in the ZR1 does have both port direction and direct injection. It's the only LT engine to have that. So it'll be interesting to see if GM adds this on more of their engines. I can tell you from the comments that I got in my LT video that the direct injection is a big concern from a lot of my viewers. One advantage the LT does have is a variety of displacements, an iron block option, and the engine comes in a whole bunch of trucks and SUVs, which tend to make the LT a little bit less expensive and easier to find. You may be wondering, where are the supercharged engines? Of course, we've got Superchargers. The LT4 was the replacement for the LS9 that debuted in the 2009 ZR1. And the LT5 came out in the 2019 ZR1 with 755 horsepower. On the Coyote side, you've got the Predator, which is in the GT500, which Car and Driver got a 3.6 second 0 to 60 out of. Interestingly, the ZL1 Camaro with 110 less horsepower did it in 3.4 in that same test. By the end of the quarter mile, the GT500 was quicker and had a trap speed of 132 miles an hour. So once it gets going, look out. But it just goes to show you horsepower numbers are not everything. If you can't get traction or the chassis can't handle the power, it's not so meaningful. Let's talk about horsepower per liter. It's all about power density here. I'm using the highest power engine from each displacement to see which engine is the most efficient at making power. On the LT side, we've got the supercharged LT5 making 121 horsepower per liter, good enough for second place. On the Coyote side, we've got the 5.2 liter Coyote Voodoo flat plane crank engine making a normally aspirated 101 horsepower per liter, which is good enough for third place in this group. The Predator that we just talked about is number 1 at 146 horsepower per liter. And even notice that the run-of-the-mill 5.0 liter engine in the Mach 1 that makes 480 horsepower is crushing it at 96 horsepower per liter, 16 more than the 6.2 in the Vet. Of course, we can debate all day long about what's better, normally aspirated, forced induction, push rod, dual overhead cam, but it's super great that we have both these options these days, and I really love the fact that Ford went in a different direction with their new V8. You gotta love this. Advantage Coyote on this one though. Next up, availability. LT engine. Everyone knows the Gen 3 and Gen 4 LS engines were put in almost everything. And the Gen 5 LT is really no different. Trucks, SUVs, Camaros, Cadillacs, Corvettes. Based on my analysis of sales data and penetration rates of the V8 option in various models, I'm estimating that about 1.2 million LT-equipped vehicles were sold in 2019. For the Coyote, this is not the case. It's only offered on 2 vehicles. On the Mustang, the V8 pen rate's about 35%, And on the F-150, it's only about 25% because remember, most F-150s being sold are the turbo V6 EcoBoost. So for sure, the LT engine, much easier to find in junkyard, advantage LT. Next up, block strength. Any engine can be built to well over 1,000 horsepower, but that's not what most of us are looking for. We're talking stock blocks here. And as mentioned in my LS versus LT video, the LT engine can handle around 900 horsepower. That's stock. Every single block can handle that. You don't have to find a specific block from a specific car or year. They all handle that. And of course, on the LT side, you've got the 6.6 iron block version of the LT, which may be able to handle much, much more. It's relatively new, so kind of unproven. On the Coyote side, the block is also proven up to around 900 horsepower, much higher than that, and you'll want to add aftermarket sleeves. Redline, the LT is really similar to the LS. Actually, according to GM, it's the same. On the Coyote side, as you would expect from a dual overhead cam engine, it can rev. It needs to rev, actually, to make its power. 7,500 Redline on the Boss 302. But the GT350 with its flat plane crank can go way higher than that. Stay tuned. So both engines have a lot of new and some would say overly complicated tech. I say it's what makes these engines so great. Both engines on this list have 5 key technologies. Interestingly, only 2 are shared: direct injection and variable valve timing. The LT offers dry sump technology, but only on the Corvette. GM also has the dynamic fuel management, which shuts off cylinders. Finally, GM also has the variable displacement oil pump, which frees up a little bit of horsepower. The Coyote engine has port injection and direct injection, arguably much better. And early Coyote engines in 2015-2016 had the special charge motion control valve, which changed the intake rudder length. Both engines have the same warranty, 5 years, 60,000 miles. Transmission options. Lots of options on the LT and the Coyote. The current 10L80 transmission is in Chevys and Fords. It was actually part of a joint venture between the two companies. Each company manufactures its own slightly unique version in their own factories. For swappers who want to keep things old school, of course, there's the 4L60, the 4L80, everything fits. Modern options are the T56, of course, and the T56 Magnum, which is essentially just an aftermarket version of the new TR6060. The Gertrag MT82 6-speed is used behind most manual trans-equipped Coyote Mustangs. Ford has not used the Tremec T56 or TR6060 in any Mustang with the Ford Coyote engine. The Coyote trans bolt pattern, though, is the same as the modular, so in theory, lots of options. For now, the Ford modern automatics don't work that well when installed in old muscle cars, so you need to do your homework because these things may be improving as time goes on. Section I'm calling special engines. Yeah, you've got the LT5 supercharged in the ZR1, you've got the LT2 in the new mid-engine Corvette. Those are great engines, but there's really one engine that we can talk about in this section. And that is, of course, the Gen 2 5.2-liter Coyote Voodoo flat plane crank engine that came in the Shelby GT350. And I don't care how big of a GM, Chevy, or LS fanboy you are, do not put in the comments below saying, oh, that engine's not that cool, or it's not as good as the LS7 or something. This thing is insane. And if you want Ford or GM to do more of this stuff, you need to write your governor and local congressperson right now and demand more engines like this be made. My first reaction when I saw this engine was, oh my God, how can I get a kit to make my LS engine do that in my car? Now, this engine has been out for a while now. Most of you know about it, but hang on. I want to just share 4 points about this engine that are mind-blowing. It, of course, has a flat plane crank instead of the always used on American V8's cross-plane crank. The flat plane crank uses a 180-degree configuration where the opposing rod journals are opposite each other, as you can see in the picture. When one piston is at top dead center, its opposing piston is at bottom dead center. This means that the crankshaft can be lighter. This directly leads to the ability to reach a higher RPM limit. A flat plane crankshaft also requires a different firing order, which by the nature of the design means that cylinders fire in alternating pattern between cylinder breaks. This gives you increased exhaust scavenging and a really unique exhaust note that's specific to just flat plane crank engines. This is the highest revving factory V8 engine in the American automotive history at 8,250 RPM. I'm a GM guy, not a fanboy, but GM guy. Props to Ford for this. Absolutely love it. So you may not care, but which engine gets better fuel economy? In the Camaro and the Mustang, both are about the same weight, both have basically the same transmission, and the lowly pushrod LT engine actually gets 1 mile per gallon better combined than the Mustang. Aftermarket support. If this were an LS versus Coyote engine, the LS would have the obvious win. But the Coyote may have the edge in aftermarket support as most people are still geeking out on the LS. But the LT is for sure the future. And if any of you are serious about swapping a Gen 5 LT into your car, please check out the Swap Time channel. Lots of videos on all different aspects of LT swaps and tuning. The power curves on these engines are pretty different. The LT engine is relatively low revving. It makes peak power 1,000 RPM below the Coyote, which is good or bad depending on what type of driving, usage, engine character you prefer. The Coyote makes less torque as you would expect. It's a 5-liter versus a 6.2, but not much less, just 35 pound-feet, about 7% less torque. Coyote peak torque is, of course, as you would expect, a few hundred RPM higher than the LT, but again, not that much higher. Some will say, well, the LT is 24% more displacement than the Coyote, so if the Coyote was a 6.2, it would make around 564 horsepower and 504 pound-feet of torque. And I think that's kind of a fair argument. So could it be as simple as saying the Coyote is best for sports cars and race cars, and the LT, with its torque and small size, is best for muscle car swaps and pickup trucks? Would love to hear your comments below. Okay, 2 things to do now. Watch more videos. Got the LS versus LT video on the upper left, or the small block versus LS on the lower left. Or over on the right, you can click that button to subscribe and don't miss another video. Thanks for watching Auto ɡild and good luck with your project.